Hello crafty friends and welcome to my channel. I'm Adrienne Bosey of Alice Scraps Wonderland. I recently shared some swatch card journal inserts on Instagram, so today I'm showing you how to make the coordinating Sizzix Eileen Hull Handbound journal, plus how to add those registers with the swatch cards on them. For the sake of time in this video, I've already prepared and die cut all of the pieces that I need to make and decorate this journal so we can focus on assembling the pieces and decorating, but I will have a full list of all of the supplies for this project in the description box below for you. Let's get started. I already made the swatch card inserts with the coordinating swatch card stamp sets, plus some stamps from the Sizzix Studio Artist Tools set. I die cut the pieces of the Handbound journal that I need, plus some of the journal hardware and the large piece from the Rainbow Wheels Thinlits. I cut the base layer of the Rainbow Wheels large die from some mixed media cardstock that I sprinkled some Lindy's Boho Dreams Magicals on. This is one of two sets of Lindy's that I used inside the journal. I definitely recommend using the chrome base plate to cut the upper layer die if you used a thick cardstock. I used some Sizzix Express glue to adhere the upper layer to the bottom layer and press them together with some acrylic stamp blocks. I've cut the journal pieces from white chipboard and from patterned paper. I used Tim Holtz collage medium and a brayer to laminate the patterned paper to the journal cover and journal back pieces. Some collage medium will seep out the sides as you use the brayer to press the layers together. Make sure that you clean any excess collage medium off your brayer with a towel so you don't get a bunch of adhesive on the top of your patterned paper. Then I like to stick some large acrylic stamp blocks and something really heavy on top of these to press those layers together. I'm only going to be using the top and bottom sets of holes in the binding for this. I will be covering the front and back of the binding with paper. I trimmed down the two pieces of patterned paper to fit the binding, which is 3 by 6 inches. I use a pencil to trace the top and bottom sets of holes on one piece of paper, then use some tools to punch those holes out on the patterned paper over a self-healing craft mat. You can use a We Are Maker's Crocodile for this, but I felt I could see how to line everything up a little bit better with this older set of tools. Then use some collage medium to adhere this patterned paper to the binding. Use it sparingly here. You don't want the collage medium getting into the scored areas that allow this binding to move more freely. And honestly, you probably only want to use collage medium along the two outside tabs and leave the center of this pattern paper free so the binding is more flexible. So do as I say, not as I do. One of these days, I'll remember to take my own advice. After the chipboard and cardstock binding are laminated together on one side, you'll flip it over and adhere the second piece of pattern paper to the other side. Now we want to punch a hole through the second patterned paper. I have larger eyelets that I'm using, so I actually use a larger size punch to finish creating these holes through that final piece of patterned paper. If you do this too, it takes quite a bit of force to go through chipboard, so sorry about all the camera movement here. Once the holes are punched, you can set your eyelets. I do use my crocodile for this. Then I bend up the side tabs that get connected to the back and cover of the journal and start to round that binding center. You may see your patterned paper wrinkle a little bit, but don't worry, nothing is perfect and this gives it an even more handmade look. I then glue the back cover onto the binding using more collage medium and clamp it down on the end with two really strong reverse grip tweezers that I have in my stash. You could also use bag clips, small clamps, or just smush it all down under some acrylic blocks again. While the back cover and binding are drying together, I focus on the registers of paper. I haven't connected the pieces in each register together yet. You can use the holes in the journal cover as a guide, placing your registers on a foam mat, but my registers are a little unruly and the We Are Maker's Coptic bookbinding tool helps hold the two pieces of paper together nicely while I'm punching holes. And I bought this tool over 2 years ago and haven't used it yet, so I felt the need to pull it out. Do you have tools in your craft stash like that? You buy it because you want to learn a new technique and then you just never find the time to get into it? Yeah, that's me in Coptic bookbinding, so I'm dipping my toes in here. Once I've punched holes in all 3 registers, I'm going to sew those together using embroidery floss and a tapestry needle. I chose a floss color that matches the vibes of the journal cover and both sets of swatches I created. Start in the top hole and leave the tail end of your floss hanging. You use this to tie it off in the end. Then do a running stitch going up through one hole and down the next. When you get to the bottom, you'll be able to reverse direction and fill in the gaps. Finish it off by tying the 2 ends and cutting off the excess floss. For these, I used 3 strands of floss, so here you see me pulling the 6-stranded floss into 2 sets of 3 strands. And then I do the exact same thing with my blank register. I think I'll add notes to this register or maybe journal in it. And then I sewed together my final register. I think this one had the best tying off. It was nice and tight. I'm sure you'll get better with each one that you do as well. Now that the back cover and binding are adhered together, I do the same with the front cover and the binding. After it has had some time to dry, I check everything and see how well the binding moves, bending things more where needed. I also add additional glue where needed. To decorate the cover, I used the Lindy's Boho Dreams Magicals. I created 3 sets of backgrounds, one using all of the colors in the Boho Dreams set, one using only Dusty Dreamcatcher, and one using only Dreamy Desert Rose. I then die cut the fine stems Thinlits from these backgrounds. But before we get to decorating, I have one more thing I want to do, which is to cut this rainbow wheel in half. Because I use 2 layers of really thick mixed media cardstock, I use a guillotine trimmer for this, and it was still pretty tough to cut through. I want to cover the holes in the outside journal covers, so I place these 3/4 inch wide strips over the holes with some express glue and cut the excess off with scissors. I've brought over some Prima flowers that coordinate with the patterned paper I chose from their Bohemian Heart collection and get to work adding elements to the cover. Start by sticking some 1mm thick foam adhesive to the back of one of the halves of the rainbow wheels and stick it to the left side of the cover. Then I use hot glue to attach the Prima flowers and some of the fine stems die cuts to the cover. While you are watching this process, don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe to my channel if you are enjoying this tutorial. I also glue on one of the hardware pieces, but you'll see me rip this off later to adjust it. I shaped one of the little handles from the hardware pieces and added some brads to the holes, then glued it to the journal cover. I wanted to add some brads to the other hardware piece, so I rip it off the flower it was glued to and add those, then glue it back down. If you find that your brads aren't staying nice, a little tap with a craft hammer can really help set those brads in place. Then I add a few of the Seidin crystals from the matching Prima collection, securing them with some express glue for more long-lasting adhesion in my dry climate. Now, let's add the registers to this journal. Cut a length of seam binding to 30 inches and string it through the top and bottom hole sets, leaving the first journal register open to the center. Then tie the seam binding into a bow on the outside binding of the journal. You want to make sure it's tight enough to secure the register in place, but not so tight that you can't untie the bow. The purpose of this binding is so that you can take the registers out and add journaling or more swatching without worrying about the bulk of the decorated cover. Tie on the other two registers and then double check that everything is attached well. One of my binding tabs was coming loose, so I used a little hot glue to help secure it down a bit more. And that's it. Let's do a final flip through of this swatch journal. I hope that you enjoyed seeing one of the many ways you can create this handbound journal. You can do Coptic bookbinding and not use the binding piece from the big sty, or you can use the binding and sew your registers to the binding piece directly. This is such a versatile album die from Sizzix, and I can't wait to see what you create with it. Until next time, happy crafting!